Hello besties, welcome to Emma's Tales. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications, so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. He stepped into the diner for a blind date in scuffed sneakers and a borrowed jacket, a CEO pretending to be broke. The bell over the door made an apologetic sound as he crossed the threshold. He slid his luxury watch off his wrist before anyone could see the flash of metal and tucked it deep into his pocket, the weight of it suddenly ridiculous. A waitress with a name tag that said Lexi waved him toward a booth by the window. Rain threaded down the glass in slow, stubborn lines. "Coffee?" she asked. "The cheapest," he said, and heard how that made his voice smaller. He set his cracked phone face up on the table as if to prove something to no one, then turned its screen down, resisting the habit of checking the markets, the messages, the callers who didn't hear the word after even when he said it 3 times. Lexi poured from a pot and left him a laminated menu whose corners had rounded themselves with use. He pretended to study prices he never usually noticed: 2 eggs, toast, coffee for $6.99, then let the numbers blur. He had picked this place because it couldn't be anywhere near his life, because no one here wore the kind of shoes that creaked when you crossed marble floors. The air smelled like syrup and bleach and potatoes. He breathed it like a dare. Her name, according to the app, was Maya. He had seen one picture, a sunlit face under a baseball cap, a loose braid over one shoulder, eyes that looked like they were already smiling. The app said she liked trail runs and old movies. He had liked that she wrote full sentences. He had liked the punctuation. 10 minutes became 15. The rain brought in a chill each time the door opened. He told himself it would be funny if she didn't come. He told himself it would be a clean exit from the experiment. He told himself many things as the coffee cooled. Then the door swung and she was there, out of breath, brushing rain from her sleeves, apologizing before she even spotted him. She stopped to steady an older man whose cane skidded on the wet tile, catching his elbow and guiding him gently to a chair near the counter. The motion was practiced. He watched her take a napkin from the stack, fold it twice, slip it beneath the cane's tip. The man thanked her, she laughed it off as if she had merely set a glass on a table. When she finally turned, she gave him a look that felt like a small, clear bell. "Aiden," she said, testing his chosen name. "Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button." "Yeah." He stood too quickly and bumped the table, sloshing coffee onto the laminate. "Hi. I'm so sorry I'm late." The bus, she said, hanging her jacket over the back of the booth. Drops shook loose and glinted on the vinyl. And then Mr. Alvarez almost wiped out. "Are you okay? You look like you lost the coin toss with the weather." "I'm fine," he said. "I ordered coffee. The cheapest." She grinned, slid in across from him, and flipped open the menu. Bold financial strategy for a first date. "Let's see if we can make this a 2-coffee event on a 1-coffee budget." He laughed, a sound that came out unarmored. Lexi reappeared as if conjured. Maya thanked her for the warm cups as if they had cost Lexi something personal. She scanned the menu with a knitter's focus. "Okay," she said. "We split the breakfast special and ask for extra toast instead of sausage. Tell them we're vegetarians for the next 20 minutes. That gets us out under 10, post-tax, pre-guilt tip. Non-negotiable on the tip." He watched her with a kind of delighted disbelief, like a magician revealing where the coin had been the whole time, not behind your ear but in your hand, if you looked. "Deal," he said. "I'll get the next one." "There's a next one," she said, pretending to jot it down with an invisible pencil. "Good to know." He waited for the moment when people usually asked what he did so he could lie with confidence. It didn't come. Instead, she asked how his day had been, what he'd seen on his way in, whether he'd always been a coffee person or if it was a late-breaking personality trait. He found himself telling her about a man he'd seen tap an exact path through the rain puddles with the precision of a surveyor, and she said, "That's someone who knows his shoes better than his city," and he filed away the sentence because he liked it. When work finally arrived in the conversation, he swallowed. "I freelance," he said. Coding. Small stuff. Gigs come and go. Maya nodded, the way you nod when someone tells you they build bridges or sell oranges or fix windows. What kind? Interfaces. Maintenance. A lot of odd jobs, he said. Odd jobs sounded appropriately precarious, and the word fit on his tongue without splintering. He slid the cracked phone into view, the spider web shimmering under the light. I keep meaning to fix this. Client paid late, and I've gotten good at avoiding the broken corner. He rotated it, thumb grazing the fine lines as if they were something to be proud of. She didn't coo or insist on paying for a repair he didn't need. She leaned forward. If you're on a tight data plan, switch to offline maps. Download your usual routes. And turn off background app refresh for everything except texts. Saves a ton. Also, cheap glass protectors 2 for $5 at the corner store by the station. Don't buy the ones in fancy packaging, same factory. Do you review phones on YouTube in your spare time? He asked. I grew up with brothers who treated anything smooth and shiny like a challenge, she said. She lifted her hand to sip and he saw the ridge of a callus at the base of her fingers, round and pale, the kind you get from rope or shovel or something that resists you every day until it becomes part of your skin. He touched his own coffee cup to keep from reaching out. You, she said. Do you always order the cheapest coffee? Is that a philosophy? Tonight, he said. It's a new habit. New habits are interesting, she said. They usually come with a reason. He considered the reason. He considered the watch heavy in his pocket, a circle of truth he had smuggled into a lie. He shrugged instead, feeling both 12 and guilty. Trying to see who I am without the, extras. Would it be rude to ask what the extras are? She said, not nosy, just curious. The question hovered like a feather. He could have lifted it with one breath. Before he could answer, the phone in his pocket buzzed with the insistence of a fire alarm. He knew the rhythm without looking. Board vote alert, preliminary numbers, 3 directors undecided, recommendation pending. He flipped the phone in his hand and set it face down again as if it were just a gnat he had swatted. The room narrowed to the space between his heartbeat and the hot ceramic under his palm. She saw something in his face and didn't press her advantage. You can check it, she said. If you need to. I won't think you're rude. He surprised himself. It can wait, he said, and then realized he meant it. The vote would not move faster because he watched it. The numbers would not fall differently because he stared. He reached for the toast that had arrived without him noticing and split it open to let the steam out. Butter softened into the brown surface. He passed a half to her. Tell me about your day, he said, and meant that, too. She told him about a temporary admin job at a community clinic, about the way people's shoulders dropped when you used their names. She told him she'd be heading back to Cedar Hollow soon, that her family had a farm that creaked and sang with the seasons, that she missed a certain creek that turned gold at dusk. She didn't dwell on money, but it was in the seams of her sentences, choosing which bills to pay in which order, doing math in aisles without making it sound like complaint. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He asked questions that felt less like probes than invitations. He discovered he liked the way she answered, straight to the point, then a slant to catch you off guard. When he asked what she wanted, long-term, she said, I want to build things that make people's days lighter, and then laughed at herself. That sounds like the quote on a tea bag. But it's true. Maybe the tea bag knows something, he said. Maybe it does, she said, smiling, and he felt something unclench inside him that he hadn't realized was clenched. Lexi replenished coffee with the solemn ceremony of a priest. Maya met her eyes each time, thanked her, asked a question about the pie that acknowledged Lexi as a person with opinions. When the check came, Maya slipped the receipt toward her, calculating a tip that didn't flinch. He watched her count out bills, and he knew he could pay for this breakfast with his watch band, his cuff buttons, anything metal on his body, and yet he stayed in the small square of their agreed-upon world because the small square felt real. Outside, the rain shifted from vertical to slanting. The window made it a movie. He imagined what he looked like to a stranger, a man with thrift store sleeves and a crooked smile. He wanted to fix his posture, sit like the person who usually met him in mirrors. He didn't. He leaned forward until his shoulders matched hers, until the booth narrowed and the world stopped insisting on its size. "When are you back in Cedar Hollow?" he asked. "Next weekend," she said. "But I'm around until then." "Would you?" He stopped because the sentence felt too formal, the way he would address a board. He tried again. "There's a free day at the Modern Art Museum tomorrow. And a street vendor who makes dumplings that ruin you for all other dumplings. Would you want to go?" She brightened, and it wasn't a performance, it was like someone turned a dimmer switch. "Yes," she said. "That's exactly my budget and my taste in carbs." "Perfect," he said, and the word hung there like they had earned it. They lingered longer than the coffee required. He told her about a teacher who had taught him to draw a straight line without a ruler and the pleasure of failing and trying again. She told him about a neighbor who could identify birds by shadow. He didn't catch himself curating his life for effect, he had no glossy pieces to place on the table. He had only this, and it was enough. Finally, she glanced at the clock and made a face. "I have to run," she said. "I promised my cousin I'd help her find a dress for an engagement thing. If I'm late, she'll put me in a neon sash as punishment. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button." He stood. The room seemed warmer now, like someone had opened a vent. They stepped outside. The rain had tapered to mist, the street holding its breath between storms. The city made a sound like cutlery in a sink. "Text me the time," she said, pulling her jacket hood over her hair. "I'll bring an umbrella large enough to be an event." "I will," he said. "And, thanks. For breakfast math. For, you know. Not despising my cracked phone." She laughed. "Phones crack. People crack. It's all about how you carry it." He wanted to say something true and simple in return. He wanted to tell her that he had been waiting a long time to feel this ordinary. He settled for, "I'm glad you came." "Me too," she said, and then hugged him with a brief, firm warmth that landed like a kindness and not a promise. A sedan idled at the curb, its roof beaded with rain. He hadn't ordered it, his assistant had a setting in a calendar that did that, a courtesy he had forgotten to cancel when he'd decided tonight required a different version of himself. The driver leaned over to unlock the back door. Reflex pulled him toward it. He saw himself move, a muscle memory of being met, managed, carried. He hesitated, aware of the math, the car too nice for the man in the scuffed sneakers, the timing too precise. He thought to wave it away, to say he'd take the bus with her, but the door opened and the moment was already happening. He looked back at Maya, ready to explain, then stopped because explanations sounded like the start of lies, and he'd had enough starts. "Text me," she said, as if the car were a fact like rain and not a revelation. She lifted a hand, simple as that. He ducked into the back seat. The door thumped shut with the expensive hush of good engineering. For one breath, he was the person he was the rest of the week, the person whose assistant solved weather and distance and time. He almost reached for the watch in his pocket and didn't. He almost checked the phone and didn't. The car eased from the curb. In the rear view, the driver's eyes flicked up and away with the practiced indifference of someone who saw too much. The city smeared itself into grays and reds. At the end of the block, a kid on a bike skidded a little and righted himself, triumphant as a stunt double. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. A man on the corner lifted a camera. Adrian didn't notice. The man had the look of someone who had been waiting in rain long enough to decide it was a friend. He snapped a few frames, blurry side profile, a borrowed jacket, a jawline that would look like anyone else's unless you knew. He checked the screen, cursed softly at the water drops on his lens, took 2 more for luck, and slid the camera under his coat. In the booth of the diner, the table still held the ghost circles of their cups. Lexi wiped them away with a square of cloth and thought, not unkindly, that they'd left the air better than they'd found it. She pocketed the tip in a separate fold, the mental arithmetic of rent making a quiet sound in her head. Maya stepped to the edge of the awning and watched the sedan's taillights thread themselves into traffic. The rain thickened again, curtaining him from her. For a moment she saw what she thought she'd glimpse in the diner when he looked at his phone and put it away. Relief sliding across his face like a shadow moved off his shoulder, and something else under it, loneliness that didn't look like lack so much as habit. She hugged her jacket closer and laughed at herself, a small sound that fogged the air. She had known him for an hour. She didn't know what he carried or what he'd set down to sit across from her. She only knew the coffee was good enough, the conversation easy, and that tomorrow there would be art and dumplings and a chance to see if this ease had a second act. She turned up her hood and walked toward the bus stop, her steps easy, the city holding out its wet hands. The cracked phone she'd noticed and refused to judge flashed in her mind, then the way he'd noticed her callous without pity. She liked that. She liked that he'd chosen to stay present with a buzzing pocket and a face that had briefly gone still. She liked the way his laugh found her without making a show of looking. Behind her, the paparazzi freelancer scrolled through his shots and put a star next to one. It wasn't sharp, but sometimes sharpness wasn't the point. Sometimes the point was a story beginning at the edge of a frame. The rain braided itself across the streetlights. The city exhaled. Maya stepped onto the bus and tapped her card, found a seat by the window, and pressed her forehead to the cool glass. She watched taillights blur into one long, red ribbon. Somewhere ahead, he was part of it, and for a second she wondered if he felt it too, the relief, the loneliness, the possibility. Then the bus jolted and her thoughts fell into the rhythm of stops and starts and the small, stubborn courage it takes to open your life one ordinary minute at a time. The bus was the kind that made you relearn balance, soft seats gone flat, a heater that worked in bursts, windows rubbed cloudy by years of sleeves. He and Maya sat halfway back where the noise of the engine tucked their conversation into something private. The driver took the corners like a man who had once driven something larger and missed it. Every few miles, the city let go of another building and the horizon stepped closer, wider, as if the sky had been waiting for them to come out and look properly. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Maya had a paper bag between her knees. She kept pulling useful things from it the way some people pull memories, 2 apples, a folded county map, a coil of paracord, a tiny bottle of hand sanitizer with a sticker of a cow wearing sunglasses. She peeled the apples with a pocket knife and handed him slices that tasted like the first day of school. He wanted to tell her he could have afforded a nicer ride, a quicker one, that there were other ways to arrive. He didn't. He had chosen this on purpose. The bump and rattle, the patient time, the chance to be a person whose travel didn't part the world like a curtain. You'll know we're close when the road starts naming families instead of numbers, she said, pointing at a sign where the paint had faded to a polite shrug. Turn left at the Wilsons, she read aloud, laughing. That's not a joke. He tried to memorize how the land held itself, fields like green pages, stands of trees gathered like cousins, a creek that crossed and recrossed the road as if it were shy. When the bus slowed for a single traffic light in a town center you could fold and put in your pocket, she lifted her hand as if waving to the place itself. He watched the gesture with a grip in his ribs he didn't examine yet. They got off at a crossroads where the stop wasn't a sign so much as a habit. The air smelled like rain that was still considering its options. A dented pickup waited, unbothered by time. A man with Maya's eyebrows and a beard like sandpaper stepped out and hugged her so hard she oofed. You must be Aiden, he said to Adrian, the name landing with the comfortable accuracy of a well-thrown ball. I'm Mateo. The drive down the gravel lane was all chatter and dust. Chickens scattered in a practiced panic. A dog announced them to the yard with a series of barks that sounded like someone's opinion of politics. The house leaned into its porch as if tired from standing well. When Maya's mother came out, she had dishwater on her hands and a smile that belonged to a younger version of herself. There were no tests in the greeting, no small inspections. There was only room. You're just in time, Mateo said after the first crash of introductions. Fence took a beating last wind. We've got a wedding weekend and a herd with ideas. Adrian changed into the jacket he wasn't afraid to ruin and followed them to the back field. He had never set a post in his life and learned quickly that ground looks much more like ground when you're asking it to do something. The post hole digger bit and resisted. Sweat found its own map down his back. His hands discovered that blisters were democratic, no one was exempt. Maya's aunt showed him how to twist wire with a pair of pliers until it sang. He listened for the note and felt a small, fierce pleasure when it came. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. By dusk, the line held. A young cow tested it and thought better of thinking better. They stood in the shade with water bottles that had learned the shape of their mouths. You did good, Mateo said, not as flattery, but as a fact. You'll be worthless tomorrow, he added, smiling. Congrat. Maya's bringing city help, someone teased, and someone else said, help is help, and that ended it. He fell asleep on a couch that had known too many stories to sag any further. At dawn, Maya nudged his foot with her toe. Crates first, she whispered, as if they were sneaking into a party. They loaded wooden boxes into the truck until the bed was a pattern of slats and corners, then bumped along a farm lane while the sun found them through the hedges. The co-op warehouse sat at the edge of town like a practical cathedral, concrete, fans, a floor that held the weight of decisions. He carried the crates the way he carried a pitch in the boardroom, steady, not letting the strain show, and discovered that strain was better when it was honest. He learned names that stuck: Mrs. Elkins, who smelled like lavender and could do inventory in her head; Jamal, who drove the early route and knew which pallets lied about their sturdiness; Elodia, who ran the office with a clipboard and the patience of someone who had waited in too many lines for things she shouldn't have had to wait for. People called out to each other across the space without yelling, a choreography of motion and trust. He found the rhythm and let it take him. No one cared where he came from as long as he pulled his weight. At noon, the church lot 2 blocks over filled with tables the color of summer. Casseroles arrived wearing foil hats, pies with their names carved into the crusts as if the letters were a blessing. Men argued amiably about which team had the worst draft choices in history. A little boy in boots too big for him offered Adrian a brownie with the gravity of a diplomat. The old women in lawn chairs practiced a kind of surveillance that wasn't oppressive so much as affectionate. When Maya introduced him, they nodded as if filing his face under a category that would be revisited later. Mind your posture, one advised him, and he obeyed instinctively, 20 years of authority folding itself and sitting down. They ate standing up, plates balanced on the palms of their hands. The potato salad tasted like someone had remembered the exact ratio of mustard to memory. A girl with a nose ring explained to him which dishes to avoid if you wanted to stay useful for the afternoon. He filed that under essential knowledge. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. After lunch, word reached them that a tractor wouldn't start in the east field. It wasn't news so much as weather, the sort of thing that simply happened. People moved without anyone needing to say who was in charge. Jumper cables appeared as if conjured. A battery that had seen better days was coaxed back toward usefulness with a language of muttered encouragement and careful taps. A pickup idled nearby, ready to tow. 2 men lay on their backs under the chassis and argued pleasantly about fuel lines. A kid scampered to fetch a socket wrench and returned with exactly the wrong size, then corrected himself on the second try. The community held the problem in its hands like a jar that wouldn't open, passing it to stronger hands without embarrassment. When the engine coughed and settled into a grumpy hum, the circle laughed as one and dispersed as if this had always been the plan. He kept listening for the moment when someone would ask him to prove himself, to lay out credentials. No one did. Here, the proof was whether you showed up and kept showing up. It felt like a kind of test a person could pass accidentally only if they were already passing it on purpose. By late afternoon, the sky had decided. Clouds stacked on the horizon like ships. The air went heavy. Birds lowered their conversations. Someone checked the radar and whistled softly. If this turns the way I think it turns, Mateo said, the lower fields will take it on the chin. They moved quickly. The problem wasn't the rain itself, it was where the water would go when it discovered gravity and old habits. Maya jogged up from the barn with feed sacks. We need fill, she said, and it wasn't a suggestion. People fell into lines, shovels biting into the looser ground by the hedgerow. Adrian found himself in the middle of it, hefting, tying, lifting again. He sensed, not from a map in front of him, but from the way the land folded, that the water would race down the gap between the fields and spill toward the creek. He climbed the slight rise and saw it, a channel already etched by years of smaller storms, a shiny stripe of clay like a sign. V-shape, he said to the nearest group. Point upstream, open end to the field. If we can slow it, we can steer it. He didn't raise his voice. He pointed, and bodies adjusted around the pointing because they recognized the logic. He sent 2 kids to the tool shed for tarps and old doors, anything flat. He put a taller man in the line where the sacks needed to stack higher and swapped in shorter arms where they could move faster without the weight. The first drops hit while they worked, fat and exploratory. The smell of petrichor rose like an old song. Then the storm arrived in earnest, not punishing yet, but purposeful. The trench they had cleared along the gravel lane caught the first rush and sent it toward the ditch they had widened. The V-shaped berm flexed and held. He walked the line, knee-deep in the work, and moved people like chess pieces, but kindly. You, rest. You, switch. Keep the seams tight. If it looks like a path, water will take it. The creek swelled, shoulder to shoulder with the banks, and then calmed, as if surprised to be respected. Thunder muttered its commentary and moved away, uninterested in a fight that wasn't happening. When the downpour slackened to a steady pour and then to a nervous drizzle, the field stood, wet and sullen but unbroken. Someone clapped him on the back hard enough to stagger him. Look at Aiden, Jamal said, high praise rounded with laughter. Turns out city boy knows how to boss clouds. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. It was just common sense, Adrian said, not falsely modest, truly believing it, dizzy with the relief that the most fragile places had not given way. Mud streaked his calves, and he smiled in a way that touched the parts of his face that didn't get used in conference rooms. They walked the edge of the field to check for weak spots, just him and Maya, and the petty arguments of frogs reclaiming their soundtrack. The light had gone the color of a bruise, softening corners. She carried a lantern more for the story of it than the light, fireflies were doing the work already. Thank you, she said, stopping where the berm bent. She put the lantern down and nudged a bag with the toe of her boot. I've seen a lot of people arrive with solutions for places they don't plan to live in. They point and name things and leave. You didn't do that. He wanted to say I do that for a living. He wanted to say I am the man who names things and the names stick because my money pins them to the map. The confession rose like a fever and he swallowed it with enough effort to make his throat hurt. She sat on the low wall of stacked stone and watched the creek with him. They say the logistics hub will bring jobs and fix roads, she said, the word they doing a lot of work. They say if we don't want progress, we should farm with horses and candles and stop asking for internet service. They talk about the creek like it's a detail. They don't see that this runoff line. She pointed at the black ribbon of water sliding away from them, is the spine of this land. If it's pressed wrong, everything past it pinches. He could hear the slide deck in his head calling the same water feature controllable with retention basins and mitigation credits, heard the blandness of engineered words. He heard his own voice on a recording say accelerate the timeline. The hub's footprint would cut the co-op's shortest route in half, she went on. And push the trucks closer to the creek crossing where the bank's already soft. One good storm in the wrong direction and, she made a small collapsing motion with her hands. He couldn't breathe for a second. The lantern flame wavered in a wind that hadn't yet reached them. Crickets tuned their instruments and waited for a downbeat. The people making those decisions don't see us, she said, not accusing him, only telling a truth she had collected from the world and was offering back to it. They see shapes on a satellite image. They see a savings column. They don't see Mr. Alvarez's route or the fact that Mrs. Elkins counts inventory in her head because the scanner freezes on cold mornings. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He looked at her profile, the determination stitched into the gentle line of her mouth, and understood, with a frightening clarity, the distance between what he told himself he built and what would be left for people like her to carry. A swallow cut the sky into clean pieces and sewed it back. He left her at the porch with a tired joke about owing his shoulders to the fence. In the small guest room that smelled like detergent and cedar, he turned on his phone. Signal was a suggestion. Emails queued like planes circling a runway. He opened a draft addressed to the General Counsel and the board chair and wrote, "Effective immediately, freeze all operations on Cedar Hollow pending comprehensive community impact review and hydrological assessment." He added phrases that would turn this from a whim to a directive: fiduciary risk, reputational harm, regulatory exposure. His thumbs knew how to spell those words without looking. He looked anyway at the word freeze. It seemed too simple and too brutal. He pictured lawsuits unspooling like ribbon, breach notices arriving stamped with confidence, partners who had already purchased equipment sending him photos of trucks idling with nowhere to go. He pictured the land here getting held as evidence in a fight between men in suits whose shoes never learned this mud. He deleted the draft. He stared at the empty field where his outrage had just been. He opened a new message and wrote to himself instead, a list like a handhold: slow the timeline quietly. Commission independent studies. Redesign around the creek. Build in co-op equity. Find different capital. He stopped before he wrote tell her. He was not brave enough for that yet. He made himself promise, and promise again, that his next move would aim at the ground, not the slide. He lay down and discovered muscles he hadn't met earlier in the day. They chimed in. He thought about her defusing the subway with a joke that gave people a way out, about the way she had found him in the museum's light and trusted him not to waste it. He understood, without surprise and without panic, that he loved her. Not for the quiet of the fields, not for the romance of effort, but for the way her steadiness pulled the best version of him up into the air and expected him to stand there without excuses. He said it in his head, not as a performance but as a vow: I will deserve you. He knew he was not there yet, and he was strangely relieved to name it. The engagement party lit up the yard with strings of bulbs that made every face a little magical. Mason jars sweated on tabletops. Someone's uncle grilled chicken like it was a test he was eager to pass. The couple at the center of it all danced badly and happily, which is the only acceptable way to dance at your own party. Maya's dress had a hem she had mended that afternoon, visible only if you loved her. He did. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He found himself folded naturally into a series of small tasks that felt like belonging: moving chairs when the wind changed, retrieving more ice, dropping a quick joke into a conversation that needed to unclench. When a cousin produced a phone and shouted for a group picture, everyone crushed together by the lemon tree. He ended up near the back, taller than he remembered being, with an arm automatically behind the shoulder of a teenage boy who wanted to be there and not be seen wanting it. The flash bleached them into a brief constellation. 10 more photos happened in a burst of joyful redundancy. Someone yelled, tag me," and someone else said, "I'll send it to the family chat," with the authority of a person who actually would. He forgot about the photos as soon as they were taken, which is the only way to forget about photos. Music swelled, the kind meant for singing along even if you knew only the parts people shouted. He and Maya drifted to the edge of the yard where the dark began. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. A moth threw itself against the porch light and then didn't. Miles away and deep into a weeknight, a junior analyst at Helios who prided herself on knowing what the internet knew scrolled through a friend of a friend's public feed while letting a spreadsheet refresh. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, which is why she found it. The photo caught her for the old-fashioned reason that faces catch you. It was nothing: some country party, string lights, people in flannel, a lemon tree pretending to be Southern California. But there, behind a cousin with glitter eyeliner, was a man whose face she had seen in investor decks, in interviews, in internal slide templates where leadership smiled in grayscale. The jawline softened by a laugh, the eyes caught mid-blink by bad timing, but unmistakable. She zoomed. She knew she shouldn't, and she did. Her heart did the small, complicated thing hearts do when a truth and a secret shake hands. She took a screenshot and opened the company chat. Her cursor hovered. She typed 3 words and deleted them. She typed 2 names and hit send. The headline wasn't even a headline. It was a sidebar rumor, a spotted with a wry tone and a grainy photo. Is Helios CEO dating in Cedar Hollow? Below it, a cropped square from somebody's cousin's feed, lantern-lit faces at the edge of a yard, and his, half-turned, laughing, visible enough for anyone who knew him to know. A lemon tree framed his shoulder like a joke he was too slow to get. His assistant didn't forward it, she called. It's moving, she said, voice clipped. Finance Twitter's chewing it. I'm getting pings from legal and IR. Also, board chair in 5. He glanced at the time. Maya would be pouring coffee in her mother's kitchen, tying her hair with that elastic that had lost half its fight. He looked down at his hands, still holding the farm's dirt in the lee of the knuckles, and knew there wasn't a version of this where the internet told her first. He told his assistant, hold calls for 20 minutes, and stepped outside, the morning cool and full of work, and texted, can we walk? She met him at the end of the drive, hands in pockets, dog trotting a loose figure 8 between them. The field he'd helped save lay dark with yesterday's rain, the berm patchwork and quietly proud. They took the path along the fence line. Birds made a tentative racket like they were clearing their throats. I need to tell you something, he said. She watched his face rather than his words. Okay. My name isn't Aiden, he said. It's Adrian Hale. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. She didn't flinch. She kept walking. Go on. I run Helios, he said. Helios Capital. The sentence sounded like a foreign language suddenly remembered. She stopped, then started again, as if testing her legs. The logo at the museum, she said. Not a question, a pin placed on a map. The hub? He nodded. He told her the whole thing because anything less was just a more elaborate lie, the first date on purpose in the diner, the test he told himself was about finding someone who would see him without the armor, the choice to hold the lie when Cedar Hollow entered the frame, the vote moving forward, the panic drafted and deleted at midnight. He didn't dress it for court. He put it on the ground between them and stepped back. She listened the way she listens to everything, completely, with a stillness that isn't freezing but focus. When he finished, her face held no theatrics, only a kind of tired clarity. And the hub, she asked. That was the question that mattered. Not the rumor mill. Not your name. The hub. I can slow it, he said. I will. I'm working on a plan. She held up a hand, not to silence him, but to separate the parts. I'm not angry that you're wealthy, she said. I'm not scared of money. I'm scared of what people do to stay comfortable. You lied to see if I'd judge you, and then you kept lying when the ground under my family was the price of your experiment. He took the words like weather. You're right, he said. No defense presented itself that wasn't small. Kindness isn't naivety, she said. It's a choice. You kept choosing yourself. She glanced toward the field, then back to him. I need space. I won't argue with that, he said. He wanted to promise fixes, grand gestures, perfectly engineered redemption. He didn't. I'm sorry, he said, the kind without a comma after it. She nodded once. The dog chased a butterfly, got bored, and came back. They walked to the end of the fence and turned without further ceremony. At the gate, she said, if you want to help us, help us. But don't do it to buy me. I'm not a line item. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He watched her go up the porch steps, watched the screen door close with a sound a person could measure their days by. His phone shivered with the board chair's call like a horse ready to bolt. Hale, the chair said when he answered. No courtesy titles now. You're on the internet. Congratulations. While we're here, I have 3 directors calling to fast-track permits. You will steady the ship. Fast-tracking to outrun press is how you build a lawsuit, Adrian said. We slow down. We do it right. We paid for right, the chair said. We have the letters from consultants, the traffic studies, the whole checklist. The longer we drag our feet, the louder the locals organize, the more expensive their concessions become. If you need to clear your personal situation, do that. But do not let this spiral. We have obligations. He knew every one of those obligations by heart. He also knew the ones that never made it into memos, not poisoning a creek, not turning a route into a hazard to shave pennies, not lying to a woman and calling it research. We'll talk at 10, he said. Full board. Hail, the chair said, tone flattening, if you can't carry this, I can call a vote. 10, Adrian repeated, and hung up because there was nothing else to do that wasn't the wrong thing. He returned to the city with the cadence of gravel still in his bones. The elevator rose as if nothing needed to be proven. The receptionist gave him that look people give you when they've seen your name online, curious, trying to be kind. He went straight to the conference room with the long table that always looked to him like a runway for ideas that arrived too fast. The directors assembled with their practiced shuffle, bank backgrounds, private equity polish, a tech founder who'd sold and now wore V-neck sweaters and aggression like matching jewelry. Their screens already showed the spotted. Someone had pasted it into a deck as if the internet required PowerPoint to be real. We need to get ahead of this, the marketing lead began. Statement, unrelated personal visit, excited to bring jobs to Cedar Hollow, collaborative approach, blah blah. Not blah blah, the general counsel murmured, but hurry. Adrian didn't sit. We're freezing the project pending an independent community impact review and a hydrological study with teeth, he said. No preamble. Effective today. Silence, then a brittle laugh from the founder in the sweater. You're adorable. The chair's mouth tightened. On what authority do you unilaterally halt a board-approved project? Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. On the authority that proceeding now creates foreseeable regulatory exposure and reputational harm, Adrian said. On the duty of care to avoid avoidable mistakes. On basic sanity. Rationalizations dressed as virtue, another director said. You want to soothe your personal life, do it. But your job here is returns. We are not a philanthropy. If we jam this through, we'll eat an injunction, Adrian said. We'll overpay in concessions anyway, except we'll be writing them under duress. Worst case, a spill we could have predicted and prevented. We'll own it in perpetuity. That's not returns. That's lighting them on fire. You should recuse yourself, marketing said, crisp. You have a conflict. I'm declaring it, he said. And the conflict isn't romance, it's information. I know the land better than our consultants because I stood in that field. And I know what our name will look like on a headline if we blow this. General counsel flipped a pad. We can justify a pause if we frame it as standard diligence in light of updated hydrological modeling. We document. We commission third party. We set a 60-day clock. She looked around. Better now than after the Attorney General calls. 60 days, the chair repeated, dry as a bone. He looked at Adrian. And then we proceed. We revisit with a design that doesn't treat the creek like a ditch, Adrian said. We include the co-op equity, not charity. The founder in the sweater pushed back from the table. This is a waste of time. You're compromising the deal momentum for optics. I'm buying time to get the deal right, Adrian said. If your definition of right can't survive 60 days, it's wrong. It became a brawl, the genteel kind fought with slides and phrases sharpened to points. Words like material adverse change, force majeure, business judgment rule took turns at the mic. He took the blows that landed and refused the ones that didn't. When they finally voted, the tally wasn't pretty but it wasn't a defeat. Freeze passes, barely. The chair stared at him a long beat past necessary. This is on you, he said. Deliver something we can live with or we replace you. Consider this a clock on your desk. Afterward, marketing marched beside him. We'll need a statement in 30 minutes, she said. Make it boring and true, he said. Process. Listening. No heroics. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. IR cornered him for talking points. Legal demanded boundaries. He gave what he could and refused spin where it would poison the well. He texted Maya nothing. He typed and erased a dozen nothings. The screen stayed blank. That night the office cleared, leaving behind the residual warmth of computers and a view of other windows where other people were still betraying their spines to their jobs. He sat with a legal pad and made columns that would later become a model. He wrote as if the only audience was the creek. Ownership, 20% to the local co-op, vesting over time, not a token, board seats with veto on watershed issues. Routing, redesign freight paths to avoid the crossing altogether. If unavoidable, reinforce banks with living systems, not concrete will watch crack. Water, baseline testing before ground is broken, ongoing third-party sampling, public dashboard, automatic shutdown triggers if metrics are breached. Revenue, a share to a local fund administered by people who aren't us. Clinic, school, emergency reserves, tied to actual profits, not projections. Jobs, apprenticeship pipeline with real wages, not press release wages, childcare on site, transportation stipends on early shifts so people don't end up walking along roads at 4 a.m. enforcement, penalties for us if we miss, not prayers. Capital, recruit patient investors who aren't allergic to the word enough. He wrote fast so he wouldn't talk himself out of the parts that sounded naive. He didn't try to design away every fight. He looked for the points where pressure turned destructive and asked whether it could be redirected like rain. He sent a rough framework to legal with a note, tear this apart. Keep what you can. I want oversight that bites. The response came with impressive speed. You're proposing to dilute Helios's control, complicate profit distribution, and hardware shutdowns that would terrify lenders. In current form, suicidal. Another email popped up from the project lead. If you want this to be a non-profit, own it. But don't drag us into a morality play. Then a third from a lawyer he trusted more than he liked. If you insist, we'll find the bones to make it stand. But expect investors to howl. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling tiles, those careful squares pretending to contain sound. He thought about Maya's sentence, kindness isn't naivety. It's a choice, and realized the inverse was also true, cruelty isn't candor. It's a choice. He didn't feel noble. He felt unsteady and tired and more awake than he'd been in years. He forwarded the model to the chair and the board with a subject line that didn't apologize, revised Cedar Hollow structure, for discussion. He attached a memo that spoke their language with no sermonizing, reduced long-term legal exposure, better regulatory posture, reputational moat, increased community buy-in reducing protest delays, modest IRR compression offset by execution certainty. He added, in a paragraph that made his stomach tighten, a line about why, we build things people have to live with. This aligns our incentives with theirs. It is not charity. It is durability. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He stared at the sent confirmation and felt the floor tilt. He wanted to walk to Maya and hand her the printout like a truce flag and ask for a test he could pass that wasn't designed by him. He didn't. He looked at his phone. Nothing from her. He pictured her sleep, not soft, but earned, and decided to leave her that. Close to midnight, he stood at the window and watched a street cleaner draw wet arcs on the empty road. The city performed maintenance on itself. He envied the uncomplicated hum of the machine. He opened his inbox and found a final email from legal with a single line, we can defend the pause. The model will be an uphill fight. If you're going to do this, commit fully. He typed. Committed. He hit send and, for once, didn't check it twice. On his desk, the watch he'd stopped wearing caught a thread of light from the city and shone briefly, then went dark. He left it there. He turned off the overheads and let the office lean into shadow. Tomorrow he would call hydrologists who didn't owe him anything, community council who would tell him where he was blind, investors who would hang up or swear or surprise him. He would step into the brawl with a plan that admitted humans lived downstream of profit and mattered anyway. He powered down the screen. The room thrummed with quiet. Somewhere, a creek kept moving through a town that had decided long ago to keep each other fed. He pictured the V-shaped berm, the sack seams tight, the water taking the path they made because it looked like a path. He wasn't naive enough to think plans changed people. But sometimes they changed what people could choose. He locked the door behind him and walked into the corridor light, the building leaving him to his own noise. In his pocket, his phone stayed dumb and still. He let it. He took the stairs, one step at a time, like a man who has finally decided which direction is downriver. He didn't make a speech. He made calls that cost him. The first was to a fund that liked their returns slow and boring, the kind that flowed like a well-managed river. We're rebuilding the model, he told the managing director. Community equity, strict environmental triggers, public reporting. The IRR doesn't sing, but it hums for a long time. Why should we be the ones who accept less singing? The director asked. Because the song finishes, he said. No injunctions, no protest choking year one, no spills you have to explain to an ethics committee. If you've ever meant the word stewardship, this is where you prove it. She didn't say yes, but she didn't hang up. He took that as oxygen and kept dialing. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He pulled a tranche from a vendor who had built their margin on loyalty programs and dinners with receipts that never made it to accounting. We're canceling kickbacks, he said, flat. If you want the contract, your best price is your only price. We'll audit. If that's a problem, walk. You're grandstanding, the man said, offended on behalf of a system that had always behaved like weather. They're annoying, no one's fault. I'm fixing leaks, Adrian said. Find a number you can live with when the lights are on. He tied his own compensation to outcomes that would punch him if they slipped: water quality metrics, accident rates on the freight roads, employee retention in the first year. Legal told him it was unnecessary. It's necessary to me, he said. If the creek turns, my bonus turns off. He opened the books to the co-op steering group inside a conference room that had never hosted people in work boots before. Here are the costs, he said. Here's what we make if we don't change anything. Here's what we make if we do. I want you to co-author the terms, not react to them. He waited for someone to accuse him of theater. No one did. They were too busy reading. He hired a hydrologist whose previous job was telling county commissioners no. He signed the contract with a clause that allowed the scientist to publish without prior approval. If you find something ugly, he said. I put it in your lap, the hydrologist replied. And on the public site you're about to pay for. They put the site up with an address that ended in .org, plain and unstyled. Charts updated when lab results hit the folder. He refused the urge to make it pretty. Pretty would read like spin. He started showing up in Cedar Hollow with a roller in his hand. The co-op warehouse needed paint. He did edges poorly and improved. He did not give a rousing talk while standing on a ladder. He asked where the drop cloths were and moved them when told. He sat in meetings where people argued about truck schedules and bathroom cleaning rosters and whether the vending machine should give change. He watched how long it took some of the older men to meet his eye, and didn't demand it. He funded a clinic through the co-op's account and told the board chair there to put his name nowhere. If anyone asks, he said, say a grant came through. The chair arched an eyebrow. I will lie nicely, she said, and smiled the way you smile at a boy who has finally learned to share without being told. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He didn't wait for Maya. He didn't text her that he was painting. He carried water jugs at lunch and stacked them gently on the counter near the coffee machine, where everyone would find them and no one would think to clap. The first investor to say yes was a union pension fund with a memory for promises. We've seen ground break fast and families break faster, their representative said on a video call, her voice sandpaper and silk. You'll put our people on your oversight committee, real votes? Voting seats with veto on watershed, he said. Hardwired. We'll hold you to it, she said. I'm counting on it, he said, and realized he meant that, too. Skeptics did not evaporate when checks cleared. Mr. Alvarez, whose cane had almost slipped on the diner tile the day Maya helped him, sat in the front row at a town hall and asked a question with a voice that had seen too many town halls. How do we know you'll keep coming when the cameras don't? You don't, Adrian said. You'll know because I show up after the cameras leave. And if I don't, you'll have clauses to shut me down. He sat with the discomfort of offering his own neck to a clause and found he could, after all, breathe. A woman whose property line backed the proposed access road showed him a photograph of her daughter fishing in the creek with a stick and a string. If anything hurts this, she said, you will look at this picture every day. I will, he said. He took a copy. He taped it inside his notebook, not as a charm but as a window. When the first dashboard numbers posted, they were boring as hoped. pH in range, turbidity during a storm higher than comfort, then back, nitrates low. He watched the line slump and lift and told himself boredom was a virtue. The county paper ran a headline that looked like a fence post, "Revised Plan Keeps Farms Alive." The article used words like provisions and oversight and committee. It quoted people he'd learned to listen to and one person who still thought he was a parasite with a nicer vocabulary. He clipped the page and slid it between contract drafts. The glossy business magazine would not call. He preferred the county paper's ink on his fingers. He returned the watch to his wrist on a Tuesday morning because he had a flight to catch and needed to stop asking his phone the time. The metal felt cool and known. He was careful not to let it become armor. He still rode the bus some days because time spent standing taught him who shared the city with him. The watch ticked the same either way. Months drew their own grid. He stopped sleeping with his phone under his pillow. He learned to walk the creek without narrating it to himself as leverage. He learned which meetings needed him to speak and which needed him to take notes and fetch more chairs. When he misstepped, he said so in the minutes, not in a private apology tour. Once, a contractor he had pushed too hard cornered him near the loading dock. "You're not the first suit to show up with a conscience," the man said, defensive, half mocking. "You'll get over it." "Maybe," Adrian said. "But not this quarter." The ridge where the pasture lifted to meet sky became the place where he could see how the hub's revised footprint would skirt the creek and how the trucks would swing wide to avoid the soft bank. He stood there 1 hour past dusk, hands empty, and didn't expect her. She came anyway, hiking up with the rhythm of someone who has never confused endurance with punishment. They stood 3 feet apart, then 2, then as close as people stand when they're not sure if contact will help or make things worse. "I've tried to stay out of your way," he said. "I noticed," she said, not cold, just true. "I'm sorry," he said, not decorated. "Not for the quiet. For the lie that started this and for keeping it when the ground under you was the cost. I broke trust. I broke it to see if you judge me, and then I broke it to protect myself. I've been trying to change the conditions that made that seem reasonable to me." "You've been working," she said, looking at the land, not at him. "Work isn't proof, but it's not nothing." "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "If you think this is me trying to cash an effort for forgiveness, I've failed again. I wanted you to know I know what I did and I know it doesn't get erased because I painted a wall and cut a clause into a contract." She sat on a rock where the lichen made a soft place that had taken centuries to learn softness. "It mattered that you didn't run," she said. "A lot of men run and call it strategy." The wind lifted, the kind that smelled like cut grass and rain far away, thinking about coming closer. He waited. She let the quiet have its say. "You didn't buy us off," she said finally. "You built with us." She glanced sideways at him, relief and warning braided. "If we try again, it's on terms that aren't a test. No secrets. No projects without community seats at the table from the start. If you feel like hiding, say so out loud and we'll decide whether to keep talking that day." "I can do that," he said, because he had learned what not saying had purchased. "I'll need time to know if my body believes you," she said. "Words are easy. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button." "I know," he said. He kept his hands at his sides because the point wasn't claiming anything. "Okay," she said, which in her mouth meant not yes, not no, but a gate unlatched for one person, not flung wide. "Walk me down." They moved with the easy caution of people who have stepped into water they can't fully see but have decided is worth the cold. A frog protested their presence with ceremony. At the bottom of the ridge, she handed him a list on a torn envelope. "For the next community meeting," she said. "People want childcare during the long nights. Put it in the budget now, don't make us ask 3 times. "It's already there, but I'll put it in twice," he said. She rolled her eyes in a way that held laughter like a seed. Groundbreaking day came with no golden shovels. They used the ones from the tool shed, already nicked and good in the hand. No ribbon line. A few officials spoke briefly and did not forget to thank the people who had told them no until the no became a better yes. The hydrologist took a water sample at the start because how else do you begin? The co-op's chair said nothing fancy. "We'll be watching you, sweetheart," she told the project manager with a grin, and everyone laughed because the threat sounded like love. The access road flagged as a curve instead of a straight line. The bank at the creek was reinforced with willows and mesh that would rot into roots and not leave bolts behind for someone else to find with a tire. The public dashboard cable ran from a shed where a teenager volunteered to make sure the router behaved during storms. A new sign at the warehouse listed meeting times, not names. In the office of the site foreman, the photo of the little girl with a stick and string hung at eye level. No plaque said who paid for the frame. He and Maya didn't move fast. They moved like people who had learned what speed can break. Some nights they ate at her mother's table and argued whose turn it was to compost. Some nights they sat in his kitchen and did nothing but listen to a record that crackled. He gave her a calendar invite to a hydrology workshop and laughed at himself afterward because he had finally become a man who sent a woman a calendar invite as a form of affection. She showed up with a notebook and the hydrologist made a joke about recruiting her. They took turns on the shared bench at the co-op office when someone needed to stand. When a truck schedule glitched and a driver missed a school concert, Maya wrote a policy that paid for the ticket and asked the team to apologize to the kid properly. He approved it and learned to apologize to a child without shrinking. On a Tuesday afternoon in early fall, the county paper ran a photo of volunteers planting willows along the bank. In the corner, cut off, a piece of a suit sleeve you could almost identify if you wanted to. No one did. The story was about the roots. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. They went back to the diner one rainy evening because she said she missed the pancakes and because he had asked if there was anything she wanted to repeat and she'd said, "Only the parts that got us here." The bell over the door sounded the same wrong note he remembered. Lexi looked up and then smiled with recognition and a dignity that said she remembered everybody. "2 coffees?" she asked. "Cheapest," he said, and this time it wasn't a disguise, it was a preference. He put his phone in his pocket without glancing at it. It buzzed once with something that had seemed urgent for years and now wasn't. He let it be. They ordered the special and didn't pretend vegetarian for the tip this time because the budget had changed and the habit of tipping well hadn't. Maya asked Lexi about her niece's graduation, of course she knew. The window ran with rain in stubborn lines. He watched her thank the busboy with his name and mean it. He realized, as if he hadn't already known in smaller ways, that much of life was just this, choosing how to be with people when no one was grading you. "Do you ever miss the old armor?" she asked, chin in her hand, eyes not teasing. "Sometimes," he said. "On days when the easy answer would save me an hour. But it never saved me anything that mattered." He paused. "The watch is back because planes are bad at punctuality without help. The rest I'm trying not to wear." "You keep checking your pockets like there's something in there," she said. "There is," he said, reaching. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased to softness. He laid it flat. It was the photo of the girl with the fishing line. "I carry reminders now," he said. "Evidence of what a map leaves out." She touched the edge of the photo with one finger, careful as if the paper were tired. "Good," she said. Lexi refilled their cups. The coffee tasted like coffee, which is to say like a decision you make without ceremony that warms you all the same. He looked across the booth at the woman who had walked him, sometimes without knowing it, out of a life where tests felt like love and toward one where work looked like apology and apology looked like work. He felt the quiet we give each other when we're finally not performing. He put his phone deeper in his pocket. She smiled at the server by name. The lie that had introduced him to her was nowhere in the room. There was only a man choosing to be plain and the woman who had never despised him, who had demanded he be worthy and stayed long enough to see if he would be. Outside, the rain threaded down the glass and kept its rhythm. Inside, they finished their coffee, left a tip that made someone's week a fraction lighter, and stepped back into a world they were still busy building. Hey besties, thanks so much for sticking around till the end. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button.